So I've been doing a reread of Shaman King. It's probably been about over 10 years since I've read the whole story. I've dipped in here and there, just reading certain chapters, but I decided to reread the whole story, and I wanted to focus on a lot of the metaphysical and spiritual aspects of the story, because I believe that it's an aspect of the story that I don't see almost anybody talking about online or even just in general. And I believe that there is so much to discuss in regard to the spiritual and metaphysical aspects of Shaman King's story. Takei clearly put a lot of research into these concepts and conveying them in his work and showing various different systems of spirituality and tribes of indigenous people. And I think that's just super cool and interesting because there's only so many works in general that focus on these topics. And especially if we're considering the medium of manga, there's not too many. I mean, a lot of mangas may dibble and dabble here and there with spiritual concepts, but to have a whole story that's the main focus of it, and for that to be executed so well, I think it deserves a lot more discussion. Um, it just adds a whole different layer of complexity to the story of Shaman King, and as someone myself that has done a lot of research into metaphysics and just spirituality in general, and the different tribes in the world and how they had their views on spirituality and the way that they communicated with spirits, I find Shaman King to be even better on the reread, knowing what I know now as an adult. So I just finished reading volume 2 and I'm on volume 3 right now. And what I'm going to be talking about is going to be mainly centered on some of the concepts I've seen in these first 3 volumes. But the first thing I want to talk about is there's a scene where Yo is feeding Amidamaru with the memorial tablet, and he says that it's the thought that counts. When Malta asks him why he's doing that, if he's a spirit. And I thought this was pretty deep because what I've learned in spirituality is that the thought and intention that goes behind this is what feeds the spirit slash deity, allowing them to fulfill your needs. And this is something that has actually been understood by a lot of indigenous people. And it's connected to the principle of mentalism, one of the universal laws, that the world is mental. And you're tapping into the true mental nature of energy. And, doing that, it's also an aspect, you could say, of visualization, if you're visualizing you feeding the deity and entity. And this is very common in Japan. They leave food at shrines and they leave food at loved ones' graves. And this is feeding their spirit and it keeps their spirit alive. Another thing that I believe is the reason why you see people in your dreams that have passed is because their spirit is kept alive by things like shrines and graves. Because as long as there's someone to remember them, they will always exist in spirit. And I just thought that was a really cool aspect of the story in regard to the spirituality and how that was handled. Very simple, but at the same time, it speaks volumes, I believe, and it's something that is actually practiced, like I said, in Japan and also in just many spiritual practices throughout the world. Another thing I want to talk about is when Ren says, spirits are mere tools for shamans to draw from, and this is in conflict with Yo, who calls spirits friends, and, the personification of spirits in the story. Uh, Spirits in reality are tools to draw from, but, for sake of the manga, they're given personalities and you can visually see them and things of that nature. But they are, in reality, more like devices or outlets. You wouldn't call a toaster your friend, would you? I mean, maybe you would. I don't know. But I'm saying that to say, spirits, they're forms of energy that you can tap into. So you use them for a purpose. You use them to get things done. You use them to do spiritual work. So when Ren said that, obviously, he's framed as the villain in this regard, but in reality, he's kind of being right. He's right. He's right in what he's saying. Um, Another thing I want to speak on, which I thought was really cool, was how Yo's grandfather speaks on how people are soon going to completely forget the spirits of the land, and how this is true in modern day society, how people are straying further and further away from the traditions and customs of indigenous tribes and people. And these indigenous tribes and people had a deep knowledge of the esoteric and a different view of life and how to tap into the spirit world for easier living and to connect with ancestors and deities to get stuff done in the physical plane. And in our modern society today, with electronics being where they're at and just how everything is at a fast-paced nature, how people aren't really living slow, a lot of people aren't really tapping in with nature like they used to. I think that this is something that is very forgotten, and a lot of the ignorance of modern day society has led us to believe that a lot of the old ways of the indigenous people and just older tribes and these spiritual systems, a lot of people think are flawed just because they may not have had a MacBook or iPhones, but I think that speaks more to the fact that they just had a deeper understanding of life and how to interact with spirits to get work done. And they had knowledge that was just on different concepts that a lot of people now just don't think like that. Yo's grandfather also explains that the Om Nyoji, I might not be saying that right, I hope I did, Om Nyoji, those are Japan's shamans, and that how they use shikigami, which are familiar spirits, to complete everyday tasks and anything from household chores to assassinations. I thought him explaining this was pretty cool because in reality, those are some pretty good examples of what people would use spirits for. The assassination thing, obviously is pretty wild. But in regard to the household chores, a lot of people do spirit work in order to make their day-to-day lives easier. And that was, I thought, a pretty good example of that. So those are the main ones I wanted to talk about in this video. In my next video, I wanted to cover the different types of shamans in this story in the first 3 volumes of the manga and how they have different spiritual systems and how that is conveyed in the manga. So I'm going to break those down in my next video. But for now, this is pretty much it. And I just want to end this video by saying I am an artist and musician by the name of Rico Carson. The instrumental that was used in this video was made by me, and links to my music and beats are in the description. And if you enjoy my content and want to support, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. If not, that's cool too. And I hope everyone has an amazing day.